Okay, so we've been through quite the journey so far to get to the JavaScript, which will be our first programming language, actual programming language that we're going to be using in this course. Now, before we actually work on JavaScript, let's see where we ended up last time. Here you can see the website in its current form, which is just a static page here with no interactions, and it isn't really functional here. So let's add some JavaScript to bring this into life. So as we did with the style, we need to create a separate folder for our JavaScript. And here I'm going to call it scripts. And as we did with the style, we will need an entry point JavaScript file. Now, people sometimes call it main.js. Sometimes they call it index.js. Um, you can do whatever you want. This really doesn't matter at this point. Like for HTML, index.html is kind of important. For CSS, style.css isn't really important, but it's the convention. But both index and main work in this case. Just to create some separation between the HTML file, I'm just going to say main.js. So here, we want to include this inside of our HTML. So we want to start by saying script. And now this script file, we want to give it a source. And for the source, we're just going to go into the scripts folder and slash main.js. So this will be our entry points to the JavaScript world. Now, one thing to note here, this won't actually work. The reason it won't work is because HTML loads JavaScript in order of it, in the order it is written. So it will first load the JavaScript, then it will load the HTML. But the JavaScript needs the HTML to function. So we need to do either one thing. So we need to either put it just here so that the HTML finishes loading up before the JavaScript actually loads, or another way, which is the way I'm going to do it and my preferred way, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to say defer. Now you can read more about defer here even, but the primary idea here is defer waits until the body is completely loaded before it actually goes and loads the JavaScript. So let's test out JavaScript, right? So let's go back in our website and right click here and go to inspect. Let's drag this in here and open up our console here. Don't need any of these errors. Let's remove this as well. So here is where most of our JavaScript testing will occur. So now if we just say console.log, and if we just say hello from JavaScript, okay, so then if we just go ahead, you can see hello from JavaScript. Okay, yeah, so let's just remove everything here. And now we can work with our JavaScript, which is great. So where do we start in this journey here? The first thing I want to do here is actually create another file. So what do we want to do? First of all, let's go back and see what do you want to do. I like to break my actions down when programming, so it becomes easier to comprehend each part, and you can focus on doing one thing after the other, instead of like getting overwhelmed with everything coming to you all at once. So what do we want to do? Okay, so the user will enter some values here. Great. So what you want to do is, first things, we want to get access to those values. Once we get access to those values, we can actually read them as dates, then do the necessary calculations and comparisons, and finally get the results here from this date here. So for today, let's just focus on getting this information into our code. Okay, so how do we do that? I'm going to start by creating a JavaScript folder here. file, maybe file, and I'm gonna call it get user info. Sorry, not get user info. It should actually be uh, get user input. That's what I meant to say. .js. So let's get the user inputs here. And to get the user inputs, we have to do a couple of things. But first of all, uh, we're not going to be just saying add import because that doesn't exist in JavaScript. Here, to actually get this, we're going to be using functions. We're going to be writing JavaScript in a functional method. So what is a functional method? Quite simply, a functional method, a functional method of writing code is just using functions. And we'll see what functions actually are in just a moment here. So let's start here. Just let's say const get user inputs, and we want to make this a function. Now, this is called the arrow syntax function for JavaScript. You just have to memorize this syntax. And here in the brackets is where we put our parameters, actually arguments, and nothing really changed from a regular JavaScript function. But what we can do here is we can say module module.exports, and we can do get user input. So by just doing that here, we can now export this file out of this function out of this file. So how do we proceed at this point? Let's just test it out. I want to just say console.log user inputs, right? So now we can go here and we can first get this function here, get user inputs equals, actually we want to say require, I believe it was, and it will be get user input .js, we could say. Actually here we can omit the .js part, I think. So let's just now run this function, get user input. And if we just save it, one thing might happen is require is not defined. And why are we looking at having this error? The simplest answer would be that JavaScript, when working directly with the HTML, is not modular in and of itself. It's not modular. So what we have to do is we can do a couple of things here. First of all, we can do here, we can try to make this MJS, which stands for, I believe, modular JavaScript. But the way people typically do this is by including another script here. So again, this will be the get user inputs.js. And if we include the defer here, that means we don't need to export this from here. And we don't need to import this here. We can just say get user inputs. Okay. Okay, so let's see, we got a couple of errors. Let's look into them. Okay, first, I don't think we did this correctly here. It should be scripts. Okay. Now we get the text here. Now you can do it however way you want. This is the most used way, I believe. So I'm just gonna keep doing that for now. Maybe in the future I might change the way I do things. I just want to show you how to use the module export and request and why it doesn't work, since it was confusing for me at first when I was starting out. So here we can just proceed here, and the get user inputs should return the user input. Okay. Okay, should just return the user input. Now currently this user input does not exist, but we're gonna make it exist in a moment. So just say user input equals gets user input. Perfect. Okay, let's close the HTML for now. And how do we proceed to get the user inputs? The first thing we want to do is we want to get the form, right? So it is the form that we'll be actually accessing here. So here for the form, I'm gonna do one thing. I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna give this an ID of user, let's just say form, right? So since we only have one form. So I'm just gonna say const form element il. The il keyword, I just like to prefix my elements with the il just to not make it ambiguous in the future. So I'm just gonna say this is documents dot get element by ID. Now you can always use query selector, but I think this is a bit more structured and safer. So I like to use this whenever possible. So let's just continue here. I get element by ID and ID will be form. Now next up, we want to do something here. We want to say form elements dots. Maybe we should do this outside and we can get it in later. Form element dot add event listener. Okay, you know what here? Let's just continue. We're gonna get that. Okay, we can just say add event listener here, and for the event listener, we can just call it submit, since that's the default event listener for form. And for this one, we're just gonna be handling it. Let's take the events, the event variable here, and object, actually the event object as it's called. And now we can work with this. So the first thing you want to do is event.prevent default. Now this will prevent the regular event handling process, which just refreshes the page. You don't want to refresh the page each time the user submits on the form. So that's the first thing we want to do. The second thing we want to do is we want to create the form data. So form data is new form data. This is the form data class. And here we're just going to input the form element. Great. So we're just creating a sort of a variable, an object that communicates with the form actually. This is an API pre-built in JavaScript to make it easier for us to work with the form. So from this now, we can get so much information. So we can start by saying form data here. And if we just console log it each time the user submits something, okay, let's go in and let's just, for now, we can comment this out and we don't need this for now. So now let's just save this. And so when we submit the form here, okay, let's input our numbers. We can see form data is empty. And that's because this is not the way we actually access form data. The way we actually should be accessing form data is by saying dot gets, for example, let's say dot gets all, right? So, okay, if we do that here again, when we submit, you can see get all form data, one argument required. This is because we need to include all of our form elements here by their name. So here you can see we gave this the name of dates, months, and year. So let's include that. So dates, it should be a string, date, months, and year. So now when we submit this here, you can see we get one, which is just the first one here. Now this is kind of tedious to work with, so I like to do it with the gate here. And if we, for example, say just from data get that date, now this is more easier to understand, right? So here 1. Okay, what if we say months at this point? So if we just say months here and save it, okay, 2000. It is kind of annoying. It refreshes every time. But you can see we have January, which is the actual value. Great. So at this point, we got our form, but we need to structure our data in such a way we can send it out, right? So we can just create user inputs here. And we can say, we can make this into an object, and the user would input a date. Then the user will input a month. And finally, the user will input a year, right? So just get here and create some space. Now the date will be form data again, dot get, and it will be the dates since we already have that name pre-made in our JavaScript, right? So our HTML actually. And for the months, the same thing, just change it to be months. Form data dot get dot year. Okay, not dot, but here, just year. So now we have our user inputs. And what we want to do is here, we probably want to just console.log it for now. Console.log user input. Okay. So now let's do, for example, 2nd of February 2020 here. And you can see that date is 02 month February year 2020. So we have our results which we want. So now what we want to do here is actually just we want to get this results out of here so that we can use this, right? So I want to now change the name of this file actually. Probably this should be the main JavaScript file. Okay, let's first delete this. And I think this should be the main JavaScript file. Okay, so now we can just go up and remove the get user input. That was unnecessary. And I just want to show you the relationship on how modular JavaScript can be. Okay. So now here, I don't want to have everything on a single file. This main JS file should be where all of our code is compiled. Now, most of our code should be here, our primary running code. But really doesn't have to be that clean in terms of doesn't have to be just imports, right? So most of our code, our logic will go in this file. But what could we extract? First of all, we need all of our form elements. I would like to have a separate file for our elements here. And I'm going to call this elements.js. Actually, let's call it L. Okay, let's call it elements just to be clear. And here I'm just gonna take this, cut it out from here, and just paste it here. Now, if we go back, this should form an error here. But if we go here and just include this elements.js, it should disappear. Now, if we don't want to do this again and again, I think, I'm not sure how much this works, but we can say import elements. Okay, the import statement cannot be used outside of a module. Now this is where we can use .mjs. And if we go back here, you cannot find the main.js. So you have to do it in the way of mjs here. cannot use also. So we have to again go here and include the MJS. Now, yeah, let's just do that. Now there is so much of a hassle that goes with this. So I'm just gonna opt to do it the regular way, which is just let's uncomment this. So this is a way cleaner way of doing this. So we can now say we can remove this, and let's make this JS, and here this should be JS as well. Okay. So I'm trying as much as possible to show you all the possible errors and implementations, but you can see at the end of the day, this still works. Okay, so now that we are on a good track, what else could we get out of this file? So remove from this file. I don't like this being here, so I'm just going to take every piece of code here, and I'm just going to say get user input, handle user input, actually user input.js. And for this one, I'm just going to create a function. So const handle user input, and this will be our function. So for this one, I'm just going to say handle user input, and we don't need our parentheses here because it runs automatically. And here it will just take the E because this is being automatically supplied just here. Now we can, for this to work, obviously we have to include it here. So handle user inputs.js. So again, let's test that this works. Again, it does work. So we can move on here. So you can see that our main.js file is much linear right now, and that is exactly what we want. So then here, what can we take out of this file? So I think at this point, this is pretty nice and well organized. We just have to let's just return this user inputs from here instead of just console.logging it. And inside of our main.js file, I'm just gonna make this into an arrow function, and I'm gonna supply this with our E for event objects, and we can say const user inputs, and here I'm just gonna change it actually to get user inputs. So see the way I'm structuring my file here? So get user inputs. So I'm slowly changing parts of the code to make it work better. So here, instead of handle user inputs, get user inputs. So again, making sure that this works, going back. So searching. So okay, nothing happens, but it works. Nothing happens because we removed the console.log statement and we're just returning it. Now this might seem unnecessary, but as your project grows, you'll think the level of organization that is occurring here. Now continuing from this point, we can see that we can do actually one more thing. Since we already have everything set up in the form, we can just create a new date, right? So const date equals new date, and the date will be just an organization of user inputs. First of all, we're just going to take user input dot date, then user input dot month, then user input dot year. Now there are some reasons this won't really work, but we're gonna talk about this more next time. For now, let's look at. Okay, yeah, we have to console.log this first of all. Console.log date for it to actually show up. And you see invalid dates, which is actually the way we want this to work, because here we are importing just strings, and that's not the way we want it to happen. The first thing we want to do, we can do to try and fix it, is to try to transform this into numbers. For example, let's say this is a number. Okay, this is also a number. Okay, the month is actually not a number. You can't really convert a month to a number. Now, instead of console.logging the dates, let's try to console.log the user inputs and see the difference. So now if I say 01, for example, and 2000 here, you can see it is converted to a number instead of a string. Now, that is good behavior, but what about the months? So we need a conversion, right? So months conversion.js, months conversion.js here. And we just need a constant here, months conversion. And now this constant will just be a list or an object here. So the first element will be January, and January will be 0. So we'll be using a 0 based indexing. And here we will just continue 12 times, around 12 times here. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August here, and a couple of more remain here. So so let's just duplicate this a couple of times. June, July, August, September, October, November, and finally December here. Now we can change this from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, and going on 6, 7, 8, 10, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, and we'll end it as 11 here. So obviously we're using 0 based indexing here. Now obviously we have to include this in our HTML script source script slash months conversion, and I'm just going to get this up here, and we're just going to be using the months conversion, right? So to find the actual months, the index of the months, we're going to say months conversion at, this will be here. These are all the possible values, and we're going to say user input dot months. And if we save, and if we just start by saying 1 and 2000 here, it should be 0 since it's January. But if this was March, it should be 2. Great. So just know that this is the syntax to get a value from a key. So yeah, I think this could, working with dates is not the easiest thing, but we're going to be trying to break it down even further in the coming videos. For today, let's just finish by saying git add all, git commit with a message added JS config, and git push. Okay. So that's all for today. Next time we're going to be continuing further in the JavaScript and working with dates even more. Okay, thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.